night school.
Woo-woo.
You got to say night school at the beginning.
Oh, do I say it right now?
Otherwise, the YouTube algorithm like won't upload it.
Can I sing it? Night school.
Yes. So Brooke's on the podcast because Raleigh was in Cabo last week. And so I was like, well, I'm done with this book, so I'll just do it with Brooke. And then last weekend, when we were going to come do the podcast, it was snowing. So we did it now, and now Raleigh's back from Cabo.
And I'm still taking his place.
But you're doing it anyway.
Yeah.
Oh, dude, what else was I going to say? Oh, yeah, you know what I was going to say? I'm excited for Juice to see this because there's crystals on the table. And I've been telling Juice about you because he's traveling the world. And he's like, so you got a collection of crystals now? He always watches the podcast like to stay caught up with us. And so now he's going to turn on the podcast and there's going to be crystals all over the table all of a sudden. I love it. So right before we came on to record, it came up in conversation whether or not the imagination is real. Something that, so I've talked about Carl Jung a decent amount to you and on the podcast because I'm obsessed with him. And something that he said about his model for psychology is that the most misunderstood thing about his teachings is that he regards the psyche as real. And it's really common among psychologists to think of like this dimension of reality as something that's real, and anything that happens in our inner world as being not real. And I don't think it's a constructive way to approach people's psychology. Like if somebody's going through something in their head, to be told that there's a stark like differentiation. This is real right here. What's going on in your head isn't. It's just not really useful.
It's
like,
very real to them, yeah.
Yeah, it's like we're experiencing this, we're experiencing that. And something that Carl Jung said that relates to the imagination, that Edgar Cayce also said, was that they believed that the object in the fourth dimension is thought. So just like this is a physical object, in this, the third dimension, I can move this around and exchange it with you. In the fourth dimension, I can exchange ideas with you. And so we have a finer body that exists one dimension up from this one, but it's that body's equivalent of objects and things that we share and exchange our ideas. And so the way that Jung brought it up was, I haven't read this book in a while, Modern Man in Search of a Soul, so I can't remember exactly how he got to it, but he was just talking about the fact that the psyche was real and that it exists in another dimension. He said, if I were to describe what an object is in the fourth dimension, it would be thought. And then Edgar Cayce said the same thing, but kind of for a different reason in a different way. But that idea helps put the possibility of telepathy into context. Like the fact that we think and it's not physical in the way that this is physical doesn't mean that it's not real, and doesn't mean that the part of me that operates in that dimension can't interact with the part of you that operates in that dimension. And so, and it's something a lot of people experience, like maybe not purposeful, like, hey, let me read your mind, but like anyone who helps people by talking with them understands that at a certain point you just have to be guided by intuition. You just have to be like using your instincts to try to guess what's going on in the person's head so that you can best meet their needs because you don't know. And
we can do so many things. It's insane. We just don't sometimes realize it, like you said. Like we can do so many things.
Yeah, or like we do it subconsciously and we just kind of take it for granted. We don't think about what it really means. Like somebody can say, yeah, my wife got in a car accident and I got a bad feeling at the same time and I just knew, and it's because we're so close. And maybe they don't feel the need to psychoanalyze like the physics and psychology of what that means. Like, wait, what? Back up for a second. How do you know your wife got in a car accident? What does that mean about the structure of reality? But people are just kind of like, I don't know, like reality is mysterious. I don't really feel the need to look into it. And it's not a requirement, you know, it doesn't matter to everyone, but I'm curious.
I feel like people often relate it to like if you can feel those kind of things, like that's your twin flame or that's your soulmate or you have superpowers or you have clairvoyance, et cetera, et cetera. But like I feel like we genuinely all have those things. It's just a matter of sometimes we access those things and we don't realize it because we're all capable of those things. We're made up of like tiny little planets and whatnot. So like we can all do those kinds of things, and sometimes, like you said, we don't realize it.
Right.
But
Right. So we might as well realize it.
yeah.
So that's one of the theories, like what you just said about how we all do it, but we don't realize it. That's one of the theories, like the beginning of this book. Oh, I haven't even said what the book is. Well, Understand and Develop Your ESP by Mark A. Thurston. So Mark Thurston's been working at the Association of Research and Enlightenment for 30 years, which is the school that Edgar Cayce started before he passed away and still operates today. Edgar Cayce is the most well-known psychic of the, when was it? It was in the 1900s when he died, 20th century. And he did over 14,000 psychic readings that you can still read through. He had notes taken on every single psychic reading that he did, and there's a database that you can just sift through. But he wrote or spoke because it was his wife and an assistant who transcribed every single reading that he did. So there's clear evidence in there that he was clairvoyant. Like people were writing in, and he was describing their apartments to them before he did the readings. Like, hey, just so you know, I'm legit. You have a red couch and this and this and this. And by the way, here's your soul's purpose. Like, if you give it a chance and read through his readings and read through the evidence, it's obvious that he was doing this stuff, and not hiding it and being really constructive and productive about it. Like, he wasn't like predicting the Super Bowl for people. He was helping people understand their mission, helping people understand the real depth of the Bible.
He's like, I'm gonna make this useful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was just all about like doing good. So anyway, Edgar Cayce started this school. This guy's been working at that school for 30 years. The information in this book is basically translations of Edgar Cayce readings. So all the information that Mark Thurston provides about how psychic ability works and how to tune your psychic ability is all information that he got from the Edgar Cayce readings. So it's not like Mark Thurston's opinions, but you can't really just read the Edgar Cayce readings because he writes everything in like this bizarre kind of dialect, like, this lies latent, of course, within self. First find deep within self that purpose, that ideal to which ye would attain. Make that ideal one with thy purpose in him. He just talked weird like that. And sometimes it wasn't just like these and thous like the King James Bible. It was like, sometimes it's just bad grammar. And it's
Sometimes
just kind
bad
of
grammar, yeah.
like, one that has those abilities of vision, especially in dreams. Those portend oft to happenings. These are well to consider, yet do not depend too much upon them, unless self is balanced well in its ideal and in its purpose. So it's like, I don't know if he's kind of babbling and it doesn't quite make sense, or if I just don't understand this old school dialect of English, but it's really hard to read.
It sounds like what I sound like when I read a book for too long out loud and I start to mess up. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But for him, I'm sure that makes sense, but it sounds
Yeah.
like it's an older style of writing. Maybe that's what he's used to,
Right.
and
Well,
we don't understand.
he read the Bible cover to cover every year for 40 years, and I think he just spoke in Bible. Like,
That's crazy.
I think that's just how he talked. But he didn't do his readings from a fully awake conscious state. He did it from what's called in the book a hypnagogic state that's kind of between awake and asleep. His nickname was the Sleeping Prophet. And so his wife would hypnotize him into this low state where he would do his readings from. So he's kind of half there. And, you know, what's interesting is there was just an experiment for the first time. You saw me share this Vice article on Instagram where lucid dreamers were able to communicate with psychologists while they were dreaming. So the implications of that are really interesting. Like, what dimensions of reality do we have access to in our sleeping state of consciousness that can be beneficial to hear, you know?
It's crazy that you say that about like the hypnagogic.
Yeah, eggnog.
Sleep.
Eggnog
Because-
hypnagogic.
Because doctors like will try and lead you away from the spiritual part of that belief, kind of like something I've read before, like the left side of the brain, the right side of the brain, you have to be on one of the teams, you know, like you can't mix religion and spirituality or science and spirituality and whatnot. But doctors will tell you that's like related to narcolepsy and whatnot when you're in that dream state of mind or some kind of mental illness, when in reality it's like you're going through something spiritual, like you're going through
Yeah.
what we're supposed to like go through in our bodies and brains.
Yeah.
So that's interesting that you say that.
There's really an obsession among the medical community right now of putting things that aren't states of consciousness that aren't understood into boxes, calling them bad, calling them a name. Because like when you put a name on something, then it feels like you understand it. It feels like you have control of it. It feels like it can't hurt you. Like, and so I think with these alternate states of consciousness that psychologists and medical doctors don't understand, they're just like, okay, if we call it psychosis, or we call it mania, or we call it what was the sleep thing you just said, narcolepsy,
Narcolepsy.
then like it has a name, it can't hurt me, I understand it, it's not over my head. It's like, or not over their head, but like it's not the unknown
Yeah.
because I named it. And it's like, but we really don't get.
We don't get half of the things because we don't have the capability, or maybe we do and it's just not released yet, to understand every single thing that we're supposed to understand or even not supposed to understand. We're supposed to just feel and like learn as we go. But like they want to put a label on every single thing, which isn't always their fault because they're just doing what they think is right. Like their
And I think it's still useful. Like even I want to read the DSM-5 as somebody who's interested in alternative states of consciousness and their utility, even though the DSM-5 is like, the DSM-5 is just a social work textbook that like puts a name on every single mental illness or psychotic or neurotic state of consciousness. Like, yeah, if someone kind of counts pennies and it's just their butt, this is the name for that. There's
ADHD.
like, there's a fucking like 3-inch tall textbook, and all it does is list weird states of consciousness that people get into. So I feel like these scientists are like, they're unconscious of what they're doing. They're like, every weird state of consciousness, add it to the fucking book. I went to a social work training one time where this like fancy doctor guy came and taught, and he's like the DSM of, I think it was like 2018 when I took this. He's like, the 2018 DSM-5 is coming out, and it's going to be a list of the 4 people in North America who aren't mentally ill. And because like even social workers and counselors at this point are making fun of how extensive this list is, and some psychologists might think they're writing this long list of all of these different states of consciousness so that they can try to fix them all and make everyone normal. But ultimately, what that list is useful for is like whatever you want to make it useful for. Like as someone who wants to study consciousness and alternative states of mind, I want to read that book. Just like, all right, what are all the weird places people end up in the 4th dimension? Like this book is a list of it. It just doesn't know that that's what it is.
I genuinely feel like those things are real, like psychosis, narcolepsy, ADHD, but I feel like it's real because we've evolved into that way of being. So like what we think comes to life, kind of like the 4th dimension thought. So like what we think literally happens. So we've evolved into those, I guess you would call them like mental illnesses or diseases and whatnot. But I feel like that's just like what we are in a sense, like, and then we put a name to it to kind of tame us from exploring any further territory in our mind and whatnot.
Are you saying like they could be evolutions, like they could be useful?
They can be useful because that's how we've evolved into thinking, like,
right.
Oh, this is what's going on, like with this person, like let's figure it out and put a name to it so we can help them. And like it's like social media, like they wanted to make it to help people like put their work out there, but those kind of things like always turn bad and whatnot. In the beginning, it's helpful and useful. There's a good intent behind it. But when the wrong people get their hands on it, it goes out of control. So it's kind of like putting names on mental illnesses and whatnot, like you just said. It just kind of evolves into this pattern of, I feel like, trying to tame us and like keeping us in a bubble so we don't explore out of that territory and like learn about what we're supposed to learn about.
Right.
And evolve.
Because what the DSM-5 doesn't describe well is what a healthy state of consciousness even is.
Because no one knows.
That's up to like the interpretation of whoever is trying to help people get normal, whatever the normal state of mind is. And having gone through the mental health system, it felt like the normal state of mind was working. It felt like that's what they were really worried about. It was like, go work, like go contribute to the economy, which is good. Like, yeah, go work and contribute to the economy for sure. And that is a marker of being in a healthy state of consciousness. Like if someone can't work, like they can't do a job, like they need help, because we all want to be able to be productive and contribute. But like if that's like the definition of healthy consciousness, it's just we're missing something. So, but I feel like all that data will still be useful. But there's a book called something Neurodiversity, and it's about how bipolar people make the best artists and thinkers, and autistic people and OCD people and all of these different labels that get put on our, what's that?
Madness and creativity go hand in hand.
Right. There's a really awesome book about that called Touched by the Fire, and it's about manic episodes of bipolar and how learning to be creative with mania is like learning to handle fire. Like it can burn you or you can cook your food with it. And so being born with that gift and curse is like, it's like, okay, that fire's in you, so you're going to manage it or not. But it's destructive. So the psychologists are like right, for sure, it's dangerous and destructive. also it's the reason you have
Also
an
do some
iPhone in your
yoga,
hand
yeah.
and all of this crazy shit that we've done, and you're listening to great music and all these things, because people go into these states of consciousness and figure out things that you can't figure out when you're normal, and they take it back. The question is, and I think it was Joseph Campbell who said this really well. He was, I don't know what exactly he was, but he wrote an awesome book called The Hero with a Thousand Faces. It's about like the basic hero story that appears in all sorts of different stories. They're all kind of telling the same hero story. The hero goes out into the unknown and they find something useful and they take it back, is part of the story that like all heroes go through. At the beginning of that book, it says that it talks about the psychological hero, the person who gets lost in the unknown of the psychological space. And they can either stay lost there and they'll just be wandering the streets 20 years later, babbling to themselves. And it's like, RIP, like it's real, it's genuinely dangerous. And then, or you can get lost and you can come back with something. And so it's dangerous, but then you either become brilliant or useless. And so it's like the psychologists are right, it's dangerous, but the spiritualists are right, it's a real phenomenon. And the more we see it as something potentially constructive, I feel like the better we can actually guide people back to a healthy state of consciousness.
I feel like
Because
we all need a psychotic break. Like sometimes, like I think every single person should at least go through one psychotic break.
I think a psychotic break is like, I think everybody should detach themselves from their individual identity and their constrained way of seeing the world and experience something outside of it, like transcend themselves. And I feel like a psychotic break is a result of not doing that in a healthy way. Like, I feel like we can avoid psychotic breaks by learning how to transcend our individual consciousness in ways that are constructive and safe. Like, I would much rather people have the option when they graduate high school to go do a guided psychedelic experience that's legal, safe, and supervised by doctors and shamans and counselors and chaplains, then like kids just go do mushrooms and see what happens. Like,
And fall off the face of the earth and hide
Yeah.
in a room for a year. Yeah.
because it fucking happens and it's not cool, it's not okay, it's not safe. But like, I think like my psychotic break personally, I feel like it was an aspect of myself demanding to be expressed. Like, okay, you didn't express me in a healthy way, fuck it, I'm coming out. And then you just snap. And
Kind of like the
until,
universe will pause for you.
yeah, or like the fire will burn you if you don't learn to play
Exactly,
with it
yeah.
and use it as a tool. It'll burn you. So anyway, this book like talks about some of the theories as to like how can telepathy rationally be possible? Like how can we explain this in a scientific way? There's like 6 or 7 theories laid out in the beginning, and they have a lot of overlap. They're kind of different ways of viewing the same thing, so they're not all completely separate theories. One of them that doesn't seem to be valid or like a good explanation is that there's some sort of physical wavelength or frequency going between my brain and yours if we communicate telepathically. And that doesn't seem to be accurate because remote viewers and people who are telepathic are not constrained by physical distance at all. So it doesn't seem like, it's not like a walkie-talkie where it sends a physical wave, and if you're 20 feet away, you get it loud and clear, and if you're 10 miles away, you get nothing, depending on the walkie-talkie. Also, if you put people in a Faraday cage, which blocks all of those frequencies that the brain could be potentially sending between individuals, it has no impact on the ability of telepathic people to communicate. So it's like, it doesn't seem like it's something physical in the way that we understand physical. It doesn't seem like the telepathic communication is happening in our dimension of the physical world as we understand it. One other theory is that, so you could think of each of our bodies of consciousness having a field that surrounds it, and then think of the fact that there's also a greater field that, like, there's a Brük field and there's a Travis field and there's an Evan field, but then there's also a human field. And telepathic abilities become possible when we transcend our individual field of consciousness and occupy the greater one in which both of us exist, if that makes sense. Like not being a drop in the ocean anymore and being the ocean. And that, I like that theory, and Mark Thurston likes that theory because the evidence shows that people have sharper ESP abilities when they're thinking less about themselves and their own interests. Like the broader their motivations and what's the word? Not instincts. What's intentions?
Yeah.
Your intentions and motivations, if they're broader, and you're thinking less about yourself and you're less anxious, the ESP comes more naturally. So it seems like when consciousness is seated at the group level rather than the individual level, it works better. So maybe there's a field.
We were kind of just using this as an example, I think, yesterday or today, talking about Elon Musk. Like, he does things for the people and stuff like
Right.
that. So, like, our intent should be in the right place. And, like, we don't always know what's the right intent or the, like, wrong intent.
Yeah.
But, like, we know what feels right
Yeah.
sometimes. Like, if that makes any sense.
And I thought of Elon Musk. I'm thinking about Elon Musk all the time right now. But one thing that I like related to him in this book is that this book talks about being mindful of your intentions for developing ESP. And I don't want to get superstitious about extrasensory perception and say that it's something particularly religious or sacred in nature, because it's not. It's just the way that a part of the universe works that we only kind of understand. But it's the same for anything. Like, the reason that Elon Musk is the richest person on the planet is because his
smart.
goal is to create a better future for humanity, not to become. Did you say he's smart? Right. But so, in like, whether it's intelligence or extrasensory perceptions, like, what's your
His intent is in the good.
yeah,
intent
what's
is
your
in the right
intention?
place,
What's your motivation? And he's like, what's the best possible path forward? I'm looking at all the potential paths forward for humanity. What's the best one? Aldous Huxley thought like that too. Aldous Huxley wrote a book called The Island about the ideal future for humanity, and a book called A Brave New World about the worst possible future for humanity. And that's how, like, the greatest minds get to that place. Like,
Being the realist.
being like real and trying to do something positive. Like, I don't think Elon Musk wakes up in the morning, he's like, I want to be the richest. Like, it's kind of a joke, it seems
He's
like
like,
to
I
him.
want the world to be the richest. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
But in
And so
feeling,
he's
not even in money.
in what?
And feeling, like, in our
Yeah.
own sense of knowing.
He's trying to keep consciousness free. And so there's nothing holding him back from being his best self, because the universe continues to give him knowledge because he's doing decent things with it. Like,
the universe is
that's
like,
the
okay,
way
we're
it
going to put
works.
this guy up there. Like, we're not going to put him on a pedestal because we don't want people to, like, worship people, but we want people to admire people. We need someone to look after.
Right.
So let's put this guy up there.
So one thing Edgar Cayce said in this book about Jesus that I thought was beautiful. Let me pull it up real quick. This is so cool. Let that mind be in you, as was in him, as in Jesus, who thought it not robbery to make himself equal with God, yet took on himself the burden of all. So saying it wasn't cocky for Jesus to make himself equal with God, but only because he took responsibility for everything. So Jesus didn't say, like, hey, I'm God, therefore serve me. He's like, I'm God, so all of your bullshit is my problem. And so he lived miserably and exalted. And you can see that same theme in Elon Musk. Like, he doesn't wake up in the morning thinking about how he can make the world serve him. He wakes up in the morning to serve the world, and that exalts him. Like the Bible says, exalt yourself and you'll be humbled. Humble yourself. Humble. I've never done that. That's
Sounds like how he was writing at the beginning of your book.
When you were reading the prayer healing book the other day.
Keep going.
Humble yourself and you'll be exalted. It's that counterintuitive way of thinking about leadership is what makes people on an absolutely, like, legendary, timeless level. We're talking about Elon Musk and Jesus, which is really tacky. It's like, out of context, that does not sound good
I was going to say, they
at all.
basically, like, take on the burden of the yin and yang. They're like, okay, here's all the things I can do. Put your burdens on me. I'm going to give you good stuff. I'm also going to, like, make you feel good.
I totally agree, but I don't know what you mean by the yin and yang at all.
Like the negative and the positive.
Right, yeah. If you take the negative, you get the positive with it.
Yeah.
But if you grasp for the positive, you lose it all.
Exactly.
And it's
That's too much,
counterintuitive,
yeah.
but okay, so anyway, Jung talked about the collective unconscious. That sort of group layer field of consciousness is one way to think about the collective unconscious. It's like the unconscious aspect of the human mind as a whole. Like, not your individual mind, but the human mind. Like, every human who has ever lived, all of the knowledge that everyone's ever had, all the experience, all the trauma, all everything, like, that greater field of consciousness, it affects all of us on a deep subconscious level when we step out of our own individual field of consciousness. And so it's possible that some of our dreams take place on that field of reality. Like it's a collective unconscious field of consciousness that is trying to drop down. Like I'm picturing like that field of consciousness like dropping wisdom down with a parachute. Like it can float ideas down to us,
Yeah.
and then it can land on our unconscious. And then if we make the bridge between our conscious awareness and our unconscious minds greater and stronger, then maybe that can actually seep its way down to our knowing. Like, but it has to go through all of these fields and play this game of telephone. And so by the time we journal and talk about our dreams all the time, but we probably butcher it all the time. Like if there's really beings in our dreams watching us try to decode this shit, there's probably times they're like, oh fuck, like she got the opposite of what I was trying to say, or me like.
Because we wake up sometimes and Google it, which is why I stopped waking up and Googling it, because it's like
But
you're gonna be haunted or something like that.
I
And I'm
think
like,
Googling it can be like,
it
I mean,
can't.
you don't know what source you're getting, but someone like Carl Jung who has taken the time to try to decode the language with which the collective unconscious speaks so that people can understand, like the dream I had about a black puppy last night, I believe the fact that the animal was black makes it unconscious. And the fact that
Okay.
not that it's any less valuable than any color puppy. That's not what I'm. And the fact that it's a puppy means that it represents something useful. So I'm like, okay, or youthful. So it's like, not that black puppies aren't useful. That's not what I'm saying. So it's like, I can say based on the insights that Carl Jung provided that that animal in my dream might represent something unconscious and something that's youthful and playful, and then try to figure out, because I was mean to the puppy in the dream, not that.
What's wrong?
I was.
The show's ended.
And then I'm looking at that and I'm like, is there an innocent, youthful, playful, unconscious part of myself that I'm abusing? What does that mean about my relationship to the unconscious aspects of
You
my
are very
psyche?
hard on yourself.
Right. And I'm probably hard on myself for things that are so natural.
Yeah.
That's like shame for things that are natural. That the collective unconscious that transcends what I know is trying to trickle that knowledge down to me, because I pray before I go to sleep and say like, hey, teach me something about how I can better carry out God's mission in this world, brighten my consciousness tonight. And then you have dreams like that and you're like, then you can sit back and reflect and go, okay, what does that mean? Did you want to say something?
A lot of people, like, a lot of times where I've researched it, it definitely depends on your sources and whatnot, but, like, black relates. The color
She's so racist, Evan. It's crazy.
started
Like she
this.
keeps bringing up race throughout this whole conversation.
I'm literally wearing black. Anyways.
My favorite jacket is black, okay? I'm not racist.
The color is represented like in dreams to like negativity. Can you hear my tummy rumble?
I didn't hear your tummy rumble. I'll check back on the
Is that
tapes.
gonna catch that?
I think
Okay.
you have to talk closer to the microphone. Like sometimes you're just straight chilling back here.
Okay, so like in dreams and whatnot, it started, it won't stop. Okay. The color relates to like negativity, is whereas like white relates to like pureness and holiness and going on the right path. But like I don't necessarily always believe in that. I believe in like you have to look at every single symbolization, and that's why in dreams it's so important every night that you can to wake up. I'm a part of like this group where I talk with this older lady, and she is so she's so intellectual about like the spiritual consciousness of dreams and the meanings and like related to God and every kind of aspect that you can think of. It's open, kind of like our broadness in religion and whatever philosophy, blah blah blah. But for me, like I think that it really just kind of has to resonate with you. Like I said, you have to look at the symbolizations, wake up, record your dreams, like leave a space in between, like I was talking about, like that lady told me, and kind of fill in the gaps as you go, because the more you wake up and record your dreams, the more you're going to remember them.
Right.
Because like if you wake up and you're like, I don't want to remember that, or like it's so important to wake up and record it, because that brings you that much closer to understanding like the consciousness and subconsciousness and the collective consciousness of your mind and whatnot.
Yeah.
But like black in a dream, like for me, and I know for you too, represents like our shadow selves. So like that's interesting that you say you had a black puppy in there and it was representing a shadow self of yourself that you're neglecting, because every
Mm-hmm.
single night I have a dream of a black animal, and for the most part like it's always my kitten Sabi, and she's there guiding me. So something
Mm-hmm.
I've also learned about in dreams, from my own belief, is that like dreams are there to guide us too. Like they're definitely on a different plane, in a different dimension, like astral projection, etc., but like they're there to guide us. The things that we see in them don't always mean like, we shouldn't go like searching for like, I don't know, like Google and stuff like that. Like I said, it's important to find your
Mm-hmm.
sources, because for the most part, I genuinely believe that they're guiding us or reconnecting us to
Yeah.
past lives, trying to guide us to where we're supposed to go, like
Yeah.
rather than like, this is what's going on, this is what's going
Well,
on.
the way I think about it is like what Carl Jung was trying to map out was the language of the collective unconscious,
Mm-hmm.
but just because there is a language that occurs in the dream realm doesn't mean that you can interpret what that something is saying with that language without context.
Mm-hmm.
Like in the English language, you can say one word in two different situations and have it mean two completely different things. And if you just Googled, like, you said something really funny the other day, and I was like, shut the fuck up, because it was so funny.
I did.
And shut the fuck up. But if you went and Googled, my boyfriend told me to shut the fuck up, what does that mean? You know,
It
people
means
would be
shut the
like, people would be like, yeah, you're not okay. But you can't, just because those words do have a meaning and they do fit into a language structure that communicates ideas, doesn't mean you can't understand what I said without the context.
Tone of voice
And so,
sometimes gets taken out of context too, because Google doesn't know that I typed it in like shut the fuck up. It thinks I
right,
typed it in like shut the fuck up.
right.
Like
So you can
monotone.
Google what does a black wolf mean,
Yeah,
but
and it's gonna
they
say
don't
something
know
like
everything
it means
that's going on in
negativity
your
is
life.
coming and whatnot. But for me, in that dream, like there were 5 black wolves, and they were all representing my shadow selves and like stuff like that.
But that is what it would say. If you Googled it, it would say represents your shadow
No,
self.
it didn't. I've tried before, and
What did it say?
it said that that black wolf represents negativity is coming into your life, and I was like, no, it doesn't.
That's a
because-
really reckless blog post somebody put on the
Yeah.
internet.
Yeah, that's why I kind of stray
Anyway.
away from it. It's very important to have good sources.
Right. But Carl Jung would say represents your shadow self.
That's what I'm saying.
He's legit.
So
But
we're as
still,
smart
that
as
doesn't
Carl
mean
Jung.
like
Wow.
what kind of shadow self?
We
Like
made
why?
it.
Huh?
I said we're as smart as Carl Jung. We made it.
Finally. We had an idea he had.
Wow.
I didn't. I got it from him. I got it from that.
So you're quoting
that
a quote you found
nun
on the
lady.
internet. Said to
No,
be
I
made
found it
by
in a nun
Carl
lady.
Jung.
I found it from a nun lady's mouth. She told me that. So one of the takes that Carl Jung had on telepathic ability, and I don't agree with what he said because I don't understand it. Like it's over what he really meant. I'm sure is over my head. So you know how synchronicities can happen, like you and I might have a similar experience on the same day, and maybe it means something about something that our relationship needs to know or whatever.
Or how you're constantly seeing the number 4 carved into things.
Yeah, but I'm talking about like that's a synchronicity too, but in this specific example, I'm thinking of synchronicities that happen between two people.
Oh, okay.
So Carl Jung described telepathic events as a synchronicity happening. So like if you tell me to figure out what you're thinking right now and I say you're thinking about black tea, then or green tea, it doesn't matter. Then it never gets old. Then if I say, "Oh, you're thinking about tea right now," and you say, "Yeah, I was," it doesn't necessarily mean from a Jungian perspective that I did perceive that you were thinking about tea. It could also mean that we both synchronistically were thinking about tea at that moment. Like just because we both thought about tea doesn't mean I got it out of your psyche. It could mean
It just means that
that
we're
for
two
some
flesh puppets sitting here like tea.
and
Just think
the
about
same
tea.
spiritual thing plugged into two flesh
Yeah.
puppets and the tea idea popped up in both of our heads, and maybe it wasn't my receiver hearing something from your psyche. So but I think he meant something deeper by that I'm not getting. And so I'm throwing it out there to honor that the book had that as part of the list, but I really don't understand it. The way Mark Thurston explained it, it didn't sound like he understood it. And Jung is so ridiculously deep that
Can you
I'm
say
just
it again?
say what again? The idea?
Yeah.
The idea is that if I successfully read your mind right now and predict that you're thinking about a pillow, it's not necessarily because I was accurately able to perceive that your fourth dimensional self was expressing pillow. It could just be that we both happened to think about a pillow at the same time for a different reason.
I don't think there's anything else to understand about it. It's pretty self-explanatory, right?
No, yeah, it sounds self-explanatory, but I don't approach Jung that way because he's so goddamn deep and smart.
Well, maybe that's his throw-off.
He's like, gotcha. That didn't mean shit. I was just fucking with you guys. I hope he has some of those in his books that were like overanalyzed and 40 years later. But I think he meant something deeper by it that I don't get, and I don't know what it is. And then there's the theory that our mind is able to disconnect from our physical body and navigate spaces that our physical body can't, which makes sense to me because obviously I can go off in my imagination right now and experience something that's not here. And obviously that's some dimensional space because it's a place where I'm experiencing things. So maybe we meet up there at some point, and that's telepathy.
Doctors would call it disassociation, but we call it spirituality.
Right.
Yeah.
I think disassociation is such a funny subject because it's essential to Buddhist practice.
Yeah.
And it's mental illness in the West. And it's like, okay, so what the fuck is this exactly? And it seems to me like an obsession with identification with the individual self that's not healthy. That's just like,
you get so lost in that realm that it kind of leads you to that void.
No, but I'm talking about the Western doctors, not the person disassociating.
Oh.
I'm saying like to think that to have this attachment, like my consciousness should stay in this physical body at all times, and if it ever leaves, I'm insane. It's like, okay, but you daydream and you dream and you have weird feelings about your wife when she gets in car accidents and all of the weird fucking things that happen in reality. It just doesn't seem like an honest perspective to me.
Our bodies every single night when we dream. Like, who knows where we go? We're astral projecting.
Right. Well, they would say you don't go anywhere. Your brain does weird things.
Yeah.
And your brain is a robot that experiences things here and then experiences things in its own biology that you sometimes remember that are random. I talked to one mental health counselor one time who I was wondering if we could start our sessions by like going over songs that I wrote when I wasn't trying, like just like free written songs and like what I said and what it means to me, or dreams and what they mean. And he's like, oh, I guess we could go over songs, but dreams, honestly, there's no evidence that there's any meaning to dreams. Like they're just random misfirings in your brain while you're sleeping. It's just like, why do you do this job? Is this interesting to you? Like, what? Is the mind interesting to you or not? Why are you a counselor? But the Edgar Cayce philosophy on why telepathy is possible is that he believes in a model of the psyche that there's connections in dimensions of reality all the way between the individual psyche and the universal awareness or God awareness or universal consciousness or whatever you want to call it. So the map that this book lays out is individual consciousness, individual subconsciousness, then collective unconscious, and then etheric plane, and then astral plane. I have no idea what etheric plane means. The astral plane is like the plane in which your four-dimensional body can navigate seemingly, like, I don't want to say it's your four-dimensional body navigating the three-dimensional world because it's not that. It's your four-dimensional body navigating the four-dimensional world in the space in that world in which your three-dimensional body exists. Like if my four-dimensional body comes into this room right now, it's still in the fourth dimension. I can't see it, but it's visiting the part of the fourth dimension in which my three-dimensional reality exists, because the three-dimensional reality exists in the fourth dimensional reality. Just like we can just walk over an ant's world and they don't even know what the fuck happened. There's a part of our consciousness that seems to...
It's kind of like DMT. Like how people like describe DMT and like what it is.
We're going to be like the Joe Rogan podcast and just bring up DMT.
Well,
you ever done DMT?
Basically what it is though. Like if you hear about people's DMT experiences, I've never taken it.
I think
I've heard about people's
where they're going is way higher than the fourth dimension, though.
Like
I don't know what the fuck they're doing.
You're leaving your body, kind of like when you have a near-death experience or when you die in itself. You leave your body and you can see everything around you. You can go wherever you want, or it's so like it's said to be so.
And I can't believe we haven't done that book yet. We need to. Life After Life.
Life after death?
There's both.
Oh,
And I
really?
think, yeah, I think Life After Life is the one I'm thinking of. Raymond
That
Moody,
sounds cool. Life after life.
and it's the evidence from the medical field of all the out of body near death experiences people have had, and people who like were dead for 10 minutes and they read the whole serial number on their stretcher, you know,
Yeah.
and then woke up and recited or told the doctors exactly what they did while they were dead and what
Yeah.
the tools looked like and everything. It's just
Or
so
where
ridiculous.
they went and like stuff they saw.
What was that Netflix show?
Surviving death.
Surviving Death.
Yeah.
That shit's dope. There's
Mhm.
some of those episodes I thought were like, yeah, a rational person who's skeptical about this stuff could watch this and maybe open their mind a little bit. And some of the episodes I'm like, nah, like a normal person would watch this and be like, what the fuck is this show? So there's, I thought the episodes
Oh my goodness,
were,
the one that I thought was they were all phenomenal, but the one that really caught me was the one where that older couple got a painting in the mail, like the mahogany painting.
I didn't
and
see
the
that
color
one.
mahogany or magenta.
It's magenta. It's actually Maison Playa.
Little sprinkle. The color magenta represents like spirituality or something like that. Like, why are you laughing at me? And they got like a picture in the mail of their son or something like that in the color of magenta.
Like nobody sent it to him, it just showed up.
No, it just showed up. Like some lady, like some painter lady got like she was like a medium or something like that. I don't remember. I'm probably completely wrong. But but she was a medium and she got some kind of like inclination that she needed to paint this magenta painting. I think it was of the sun or of like a dancer or something like that. And it meant something to the family related to their son. And like the dad was trying to reach out and be like, give me a sign. Like, show me something that I know I'm not just making up in my head, that I'm telling myself it's there, you know, so I feel better. Like, and then they randomly got this painting in the mail, and this lady attached a note to it saying like, hi, I got this like feeling that I needed to do this for you. I saw a vision, something like that. They got this painting in the mail, and it was their like dead son reaching out after them, or like stuff like that. Like it's phenomenal.
Yeah. There's so many of them that if you're genuinely curious, you can look into that stuff and be like, there's something here. But there's not enough of them that a skeptical person has to believe it. You know, like a skeptical person could easily watch that whole show and be like, coincidence, liar, fake, they wanted money, they wanted to be on TV, coincidence, and like you don't have to. But if you seriously consider it, like, and look into the medical ones are my favorite because they can like, because there's so many of them that rational skeptical minds like that. Like, look, 500 times we have an instance where people had a near-death experience and without corroborating with anyone else described the same thing. They floated out of their body, they looked around, they felt like this, they looked like this, it sounded like this, like
Were light orbs, stuff like that, like
yeah. So let me think. Oh, so when this book starts getting into how to develop psychic ability, it really stresses the necessity of just purifying yourself in all ways, more than like trying to pursue some extra sensory perceptive ability just for the sake of being able to do it, or just to see if it's real because you're curious, or just to show it off, or like whatever it might be. It seems like that what Edgar Cayce is saying, and what Mark Thurston's translating Edgar Cayce saying, is that if you have a good intention for wanting an ability that's extrasensory, and you work on purifying yourself in body, mind, and spirit, that you'll develop it along the way. It's like a tool. Like if you get into an electrical job, then you're going to acquire electrical tools along the way, and you're going to wake up 10 years later and you have a whole fucking truck full of electrical tools. And that's a much better way to acquire tools than just start Googling like it's like, okay, even if you did get the tool, what would you do with it? What's your goal? To just have a collection of electrical tools? But if you want to be a great electrician, wake up 10 years down the road, all of a sudden you have all these tools. If your goal is to collect tools, then even if you do, they're going to rot because you're not going to have anything
and then you're just a hoarder
to do with them, and you're a hoarder. So it's like you can hoard extrasensory perception knowledge for no reason. But if you're not purposeful and mission driven, then it's not going to go anywhere.
It's kind of like what I've learned so far in Buddhism and like the Four Noble Truths.
Yeah.
4 Noble Truths.
I was just going to bring up the Eightfold Path.
Yeah. It's kind of like a lot of people want to reach a state of like enlightenment, or so what they think is like nirvana and stuff like that. But like what nirvana really is, and like it's awakening, it's not enlightenment, because enlightenment is said to be like people want to transcend to a higher place, when like in reality, like our main goal is to have good intent, or should be to have good intent, and like you said, purifying our soul, because like what that is, like the fourth truth in or the third or fourth truth in the Four Noble Truths on the Eightfold Path is nirvana. And what that is like having the good intent, the release of the three poisons, unawareness, anger, and desire, and getting to that place here on earth. Like we don't have to die or enlighten in like the sense that we think we're supposed to get to a higher place. Like
Right.
that piece is here on earth. It's just like the understanding of like impermanence and stuff like that, like just
Yeah.
being okay, having everyone's heaven on earth be your heaven on earth, you know?
Right.
Like you like say, like a perfect example was in that podcast that we listened to, how he explained it was something about like he doesn't want to eat meat, but the next person that he sits next to might want to eat meat, so his heaven on earth is I want an earth where nobody eats meat. But this person's like, I want an earth where every single person, or I have an entire steak like in front of me, like at all
Right.
times, like unlimited steak buffet. So like nirvana, enlightenment, awakenment, whatever you want to call it, that heaven on earth is here. It's just the understanding of impermanence and like combining that belief into everyone. Like if that makes any sense.
Like being driven by the goal of wanting everyone to get to that place and
Exactly.
playing your part in
Peace.
everyone getting to
Yeah,
that place.
not your own piece, because we're not put
Right.
here as an individual, one person. We're put here as a whole. We're put here as
Right.
a community.
Jesus didn't just like walk around and feel peace.
Exactly.
He walked around and did everything difficult that was necessary to make the world more peaceful in the long run, way after he died. And so I was thinking about the 12 steps, the Eightfold Path, and Jesus's message when I was reading about the purification of the self, because when I was looking at that map, the collective conscious, or the individual consciousness, individual unconsciousness, and then collective unconscious. Before you even get to an awareness of or union with the collective unconscious, you have to clean up your own conscious mind and your own subconscious mind. And it's like, how are you going to do that? Because how are you going to take a step towards, like, how will I take a step towards universal consciousness if I don't even know what my intentions are? Like, I wake up in the morning and I go to work and and then I read a book, and I can tell you why I'm doing what I'm doing, but I don't really know. I'm not fully aware. Like a part of me is like, I don't know why I'm doing what I'm doing. I'm just doing things. Like if you don't even know your own intentions and you haven't, as the 12 steps said it, done a searching and fearless moral inventory. Like if you haven't looked deep into yourself, you don't know why you're doing what you're doing. You're still living in a messy room. You're still in the bedroom of consciousness. You haven't even gotten into the house, and you want to like fly through the skies. Like if not collective consciousness, but universal awareness or cosmic consciousness is flying through the skies, we're all just stuck in our bedrooms right now, and our bedrooms are a fucking mess. And so I feel like getting to that universal awareness or cosmic consciousness place is a goal that's hidden behind these spiritual practices. It's hidden behind the 12 steps. It's hidden behind the Eightfold Path. It's hidden behind Jesus' message, love God and love others as you love yourself. If you truly love and take responsibility for everybody the same way you do for yourself, like you pass a hungry person and it's like you're seeing like if you were hungry, would you feed you? Yeah. He's hungry, would you feed him?
Everybody gotta eat.
Right. So it's like, do you see yourself in other people or not? Because if you don't,
We're mirrors.
you're not in that greater consciousness, because you think you're separate from that person. Well, if you want to achieve the greater consciousness, that's great, but now those people are your fucking problem, because they're you, because you now exist in the field of consciousness that includes them and you. And so real enlightenment seems to be hidden behind those goals, where you can go to Buddha and say, how do I become the wise, awesome, legendary guy that you are? And he's like, what are the eightfolds, intentions, actions? I'm not going to remember them all.
You're asking me?
Yeah. Do you remember them all?
Intent or no?
No?
I made you
Okay,
a whole
then
podcast about them.
I know. Then let's piece them together.
Okay.
Intentions,
Start.
actions,
Yeah. Rightfulness.
rightfulness. They're all right something.
One of them's rightfulness.
No, it's not rightfulness. They're all rightfulness.
No,
Right
one of them's
intentions,
rightfulness.
right actions, right, or actions and conduct is the same thing. Right speech, right thinking, right effort.
Action. Did you say action?
I said action and conduct, and I think those are the same.
Right intent.
Livelihood. That's what
Yeah,
you're thinking
that's
as
the one I would-
rightfulness.
yeah.
That's what you meant, right?
Yeah.
Livelihood. So all these levels of analysis, he's saying, be right. Be what you know deep down is right on every single level of your being. And if you do that, then you will transcend your individual consciousness and your individual unconsciousness. Because if you get to that place, if you spend years genuinely getting right in your intentions, livelihood, action, speech, everything, you will have had to dive very deep into your own unconscious mind to get there. Because you don't know what the fuck your intentions are when you start. You go, have good intentions. How do I even do that? And you start like a kid trying to learn to ride a bike and crash and get confused and cry and self-discover and this whole thing. And so to get to that place is going to involve confronting all those things about yourself that you're unconscious of. And the
And I
12
feel like
steps
that's
have
why- I
What's
feel
that?
like that's the part like people want to skip, and sometimes they don't even realize that they
Right.
want to skip it because they're like, "Well, I'm a good person. Like I do this and I do that," and it's kind of like the good place and the
Right.
bad place, which I don't necessarily believe in, but it's kind of like that whole concept. Like if I do enough good, if I donate to charity, if I do this, if I do that, like I'm going to be enlightened or blah 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 blah. And they just kind of like people like just want to get to the ultimate peace, like they want to have peace in themselves, but they don't realize that they have to go through all of those steps and whatnot to kind of get there. Like you have to jump into your own soul. Like your eyes are facing this way, they need to be facing that way, kind of
Right.
thing.
Right. There's as it's Jesus said, don't try to get a stick. What was it? Don't try to get a splinter out of your brother's eye if you have a stick in your own eye. If you get the stick out of your own eye, then you can see clearly to get the splinter out of your brother's eye. It's when I first read that story, I emphasized like the part where he's saying deal with your own shit before you try to deal with other people's shit. But after I read that a few times, I also caught what he was saying about the fact that you can't see other people's shit clearly because of your own shit. Like you can't really help people that I'm not that like I like helping people, talking to people and stuff like that, but I'm not really that good at it because I can't help but project my own issues on people and not see people clearly.
That's a
So I
problem
have
that
to resort to like just listening and validating because if I try to the reason I'm not qualified to give any advice and I'm fucking clueless is because I don't even know myself well enough to know what I'm perceiving in people that's my own shit and what's their shit. And so what this is saying is that what Edgar Cayce and Mark Thurston are saying here is that your ability to be intuitive about what other people are thinking and develop this extrasensory perception will benefit from you being able to clear out your own shit first and unite yourself, tune yourself in and get your own self straight first. And so the great teachers like Jesus and Buddha say, instead of like, hey, if you want to achieve enlightenment and be badass in your consciousness, here's the steps. They don't say that. They just say, do the right thing. It's like, fuck, do the right thing. That's lame.
It's kind of like the
Fucking lame
fixers though.
answer.
Like people want to fix everyone. Like I've had that problem before. Like, and I know a lot of people do where they're just like, well, even if they realize that it's for themselves or for they genuinely just want to help people, like they feel this constant need to be like, oh, that person's in pain or like, oh, that person's dealing with something. I need to help them. Kind of like the stick splinter kind of concept. But people need to help themselves first.
And we're
Because, like,
really
I feel like
attracted to fixing things about people
I
that
thought you
are
were gonna say we're really attractive. I was like, where is this going?
we're really attracted to fixing things about people that we need to fix in ourselves. Like we
Yeah.
see things in people and we're like, God, why do I just want to fix that about
Yeah.
that person? Why do I have this instinct to just fix that about that person? It's like because your psyche is screaming at you to deal with that within yourself. That's a problem I feel like of that's a struggle that pastors have to face. That's really hard. Is like they get spiritual downloads about what they get spiritual downloads and they think I should go share this with my congregation. And it's like, no, you're getting that spiritual download because you're like watching porn after your wife falls asleep, you know? And then they go to church and they're like, hey, so everybody, we're going to talk about lust. God's put this on my heart, you know? And it's like, sometimes you can like get that vibe with pastors that the shit that they say is like, I think God gave you that one for you, buddy.
Yeah.
And you came over here and said it to us. Like, I feel that problem a lot. I have to check myself all the time. Whenever I get a spiritual download or insight, my first instinct is like, I should write a fucking blog about this. And it's like, no, that's not why I just got that insight. Like, something a lot smarter than me is trying to tell me to get it together. And it feels so good to like just take something and be like, yeah, I should go show someone how fucking smart I am with this. Like, no, that's not why you got it. Like,
because if you write what you're feeling down right there, or like what you've been given, and you don't like share it and you reflect on it in a few days or a month, you're gonna be like, whoa,
that was for me.
Whoa, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
of course. And so to really get to a place where you're living right on all those 8 levels that the Buddha laid out, or to really get to a place where you love God and love others as you love yourself, you have to clean this shit up. And the 12 steps lay out a really good process of steps for doing it, but it seems like the same thing to me. Like, you can get to that universal consciousness if you clean yourself up in this way, in an internal way, and focus there. Okay, let's move on from this frickin' part.
Long story short, keep it squeaky.
Foul.
Shout out to Ariana.
Foul. Jeez. Are you turning off the camera?
No.
That was the best part.
So, I think the right question to ask isn't how can I develop extrasensory perception, but if extrasensory perception is true, what are the implications of that? What could I do with that? What good could I do with that? And what I'm reading this stuff as I get into the crisis line volunteering, and I'm trying to figure out how I can be prayerfully, extra dimensionally present with people while I'm texting them, because you can only get so much in a text message, and then you can only say so much because they fucking require me to sound like a professional robot in every text, right? So I'm like, okay, the goal here is to genuinely help people and make people feel less alone. How can I really do that? Like, I can text them
And ask them if
it
they're
sounds
thinking
like you're
about-
very strong and resilient for
Yeah.
reaching out. We're so glad that you are safe. And it's
By
just
the
like,
way, are you by any trains? Like-
you're not near any trains, are you? It's like, oh, like, how do I really help these people through a
Yeah.
text message? And like you're reading in that prayer healing book, do you know the author by chance?
I can't remember.
Me neither. I want to shout it out. I don't remember either, but you found a prayer healing book at the hospital you've been reading, and
And it's so cool because it literally mixes religion, science, spirituality. Don't.
I didn't say anything.
It mixes all of those things, every kind of side of the brain that you can think of, probably the ones that
Yeah.
we don't even like think about. But it mixes all of those things, and it's beautiful. Yeah.
And it talks about, maybe, did it talk about the fact that prayer works at any distance?
Yeah.
I think it did. And
Yeah.
this book goes into that too, obviously, like, as I touched on already. There's no distance, like, limitations
Yeah.
when it comes to prayerful presence. Like,
Yeah.
I could use these, if this is real, then I could use these techniques to genuinely be present. Like, maybe I won't astral project to them and see them, but maybe while I'm texting them, they would just get a deep sense that they're not alone because of the way that I prayed for them while I was texting them. And if that's really possible, that's a fucking game changer. Like, we need to be researching
physical,
this.
like people, like your physical self and spirituality can do long distance. You know.
Yeah, and it can do long distance, and also, like, to engage the skeptic in me, because he keeps me safe. It's a safe practice because even if it's not real, even if all of this is bullshit and we're crazy and the psychologists we're criticizing are right and the imagination is fake, then
At least it's more fun.
pretending that I am present with those people and praying for them will set my intention in such a way that guides my text messages to be better anyway. And I do think that real spirituality is humble like that. It's like, if it's real, it's good, and if it's not, it's good. Like, if Jesus didn't even exist, and I'm a Christian who tries to love people better because I think that Jesus is this guy that was important and he said that, it's like, if it's true, it's good, and if it's wrong, it's good. I think real spirituality is like that. Like, it doesn't need to be validated by proof, because if the fruit is good, the fruit is good. And that's what Jesus said. If the fruit's good, the fruit's good. It's like, you're a Christian, cool. What does that mean?
As long as you're not
That
hurting
you
anybody.
that you like swear up and down that Jesus is the Messiah and try to convince people to agree with you about that idea. It's like, that fruit's not super helpful. So if you're wrong, you're a fucking idiot. And if you're right, then you're a fucking idiot because you did something with it that wasn't even useful. But like, if we genuinely do things with it are good, it doesn't matter if all of Christianity is bullshit. It doesn't matter because we did something good with it. Real spirituality, I think, is like that. It's like, hey, your religion's wrong. It's like, doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's good either way. So I feel like good ESP practice is like that too, and that's what I'm using as my guideline moving forward. So he called the fourth dimensional body, what Edgar Cayce typically calls it, is the finer physical body, and it's the aspect of our consciousness in which the chakras exist, according to him. That finer physical fourth dimensional body. And as far as I know, that's the only anatomical data that we've collected about the fourth dimensional body, like, because we know how a three-dimensional body works. Like, we're like, yeah, there's this organ and that organ. We kind of get how this is all put together. That's what we know about the fourth dimensional body. It seems like there's 7 energy centers that are each of a specific nature. And
The test that was like given to me at my old job, the way that it was set up, there's like nodes that are plugged into your body basically. And it's like a 5-node system where it sends like frequencies and wavelengths into your body, and it pulls those wavelengths. It absolutely like eliminates everything else. Like, it eliminates the person in the room if they're standing off like for a distance, because it can collect auras and whatnot. But like, it eliminates like technology, EMF, every single thing that you can think of, and focuses solely on the person. And it can pull like your chakras. Like, it shows you what's there, and you can see it. Like, you can see
so
your
that
chakras.
is the theory of that machine, like, maybe you don't know how it works. I don't know how it works.
Biofeedback.
Is it, what does that mean?
It's like a biofeedback. It's a life system machine.
I know, but like, is the theory, I don't know. I don't know what biofeedback means. Is the theory that like there's frequencies being put off by that finer fourth dimensional body that aren't visible to us, but that the machine picks up on? Because that seems like a genuine scientific possibility to me, that there's, just like we can only see a certain aspect of the color spectrum and we can only hear a certain aspect of the sound spectrum.
Yeah.
What the fuck do we think is on the whole rest of that spectrum? Nothing. Like, we think that this is just all of reality, reality.
We can't see everything. They don't want us to. Like, government.
Not the government, but
wherever we
there
came
really
from,
is
kind of like that place that we were talking about, that one road trip that we took to wherever. We were sitting in the car talking about something, and it had along the lines to deal with like, where did we come before this? Like, what did we come here to do? Did we come here to suffer? Like, did our memory get erased and we like came here like willfully? We were like, well, I want to go to Earth and like see what that commotion's about and like stuff like that. Like, what if we like knew that our memory was going to be erased, or like, what if we didn't and we were sent here as, I don't know, demons or prisoners? Who knows? But
who knows?
But I don't remember where I was going.
I don't either, but I really like the idea that there's like, oh, you're talking about a conversation we had on a road trip.
Yeah.
To somewhere. To Grandview or to Idaho? Okay, so anyway, maybe like at a different part, because we know that our bodies put off certain vibrations in, like, I don't know what spectrum that would be, but like, yeah, I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about, but if there is like, if there is a finer fourth dimensional body, if that does exist, and there is energy centers in that body that we call chakras, and there is a system that reads, and there is a system that reads frequencies, and it reads frequencies that aren't typically detectable by us. Like, with my 5 senses, I cannot perceive that there's a chakra. I cannot currently see your aura. Some people train their senses to be able to see what they claim is an aura, or the field of consciousness, or something surrounding a person. It makes sense to me that there could be a machine that could read those energies and frequencies that are outside of the spectrum that we can experience, but not so far out of the spectrum that we can't detect it with technology. Just like there's fucking 5G and 4G flying all over the
Yeah.
place. We don't see it, but it is real.
The moral of what I was trying to get at was that, like, we don't see those things because what if we're not supposed to? Like, who knows? But, like, what if we came here before
Oh, so
this
you're
life?
theorizing about why those parts are invisible to
Yeah,
us?
exactly. Because we're either supposed to learn them as we go, or we're supposed to literally just start blank. So we don't know about those things. So we can figure, like, whatever we're supposed to figure out, like, if we're even supposed to figure anything out. Like, we're not supposed to have any knowledge of what's inside of us.
Maybe we just trapped ourselves in this part of those spectrums because it's fun.
Maybe.
Maybe we just picked out the most fun part.
Maybe.
And we just said, let's get ourselves stuck there for a lifetime. And then when we die, we'll come back here. And the reason I'm like even theorizing that way is because I've been listening to Elon Musk, and he stresses the point that it's extremely unlikely that what we call reality is base reality, like basic, like real in the most basic sense. Just like we can already almost create technology that simulates a virtual reality world as real as this one. We're like an inch away from it, of being able to convince somebody that they're in a world. You can see it, all five senses, everything is, the graphics are as good as this. Everything adds up. We're so close to being able to create that at this point it's like, are we really just going to assume that this is base reality? This is the most real thing? Or are we from a place that's not as exciting as this, and we found a way to construct this reality and put ourselves here because it's more fun?
Because time
Just
probably
like-
exists different outside of where we're at right now. So, like, what if we were there for a really long time and we're like, let's go, like, do something, you know?
Right.
Like, let's go hang out on Earth for 8
Yeah,
years.
put me
100
in the
years.
place where I can see like these 7 colors only.
Yeah.
I don't need to see all 950 colors. I just want to see like these like
Yeah.
couple of colors. And so we look at a rainbow and we just see this little strip. But
We're
like
like,
in
"That's the
reality,
planet."
it's like we could probably just see a rainbow all the way around our everything, but we just like see this little strip of color and we're like, yeah, that's all the colors there are. It's like, but we're just stuck in this one little slice of reality. And it described our three-dimensional self as a slice of our four-dimensional self. Like if you picture our four-dimensional self being a deck of cards, our three-dimensional self is like one card. And so I think that one thing that we can do to tune ourselves with our four-dimensional self is to explore all aspects of our being. Like if when we get in an argument, or when we're being playful, or when we're having a serious conversation, it's a different card, but it's the same deck. You know, that's Travis and that's Brük, but that's that card of Brük and that's that card of Travis. And so we slide around on those decks and express different little pieces of ourselves.
It's like tarot. Sometimes we're like the devil card, and sometimes we're like the goddess card.
No, it's like the playing cards. It's like an ace and a 2.
I like my theory.
But fuck, what was I gonna say? Oh, you know what's interesting is when people are forced to stare in the mirror for an extended period of time,
People are forced to do that?
in a scientific study, they aren't usually, but when they are, they will see their faces transform. Like if you try it, go stare it in your face for 10 minutes.
I've done that before.
You ever done it? Do you?
Every day,
Do you
huh?
see your
It's
face
practice.
shift? Oh. No, for Evan fucking sold it and was like, I already do that. If you do, your face will transform.
Yeah.
Before your eyes, it will change. And it's like, and I think what that is like viewing different cards in the deck and like watching yourself flipping through the cards. Like you'll see the anger in yourself. You'll see yourself become younger and older. You'll see yourself become happier and angrier.
I don't know if this is okay, but going back to like being a Joe Rogan podcast, like when you take shrooms and you look at yourself on the mirror, you see.
I experienced that before on acid, and it is more like, it's more intense than
It's
doing
more
it
psychedelic and
sober,
intense, yeah.
like by a magnitude of 100. And so it's dangerous to do it because if you don't understand beforehand that what you're seeing is a series of different slices of your whole self that you're not normally consciously aware of, then you can do psychedelics and look in the mirror and see something about yourself that terrifies you so much that it harms your ego. Your ego as in your perception of yourself.
That when
like
the drug wears off, you're not you anymore.
yeah, if the drug wears off and you're like, fuck, who am I? Because
Yeah.
I just looked in the mirror and saw a monster. Like you might see an actual like monster on fire, you know, and then you're gonna and you're gonna get the sense that what you're seeing is actually you. and it is an actual abstract expression of an aspect of yourself you're not normally consciously aware of. And so it's like, I'm not advising that anyone do psychedelics and stare in the mirror. It's psychologically dangerous and it's not a fucking joke. But if you do it sober, it will still be psychedelic. Like if you sober stare in the mirror for 10, 20 minutes, you'll be like, that was fucking weird. And what that points out to me, getting back to this third dimensional and fourth dimensional reality thing, is that we tend to try to stick with a certain slice of our personality because it's comfortable. Like, so we can wake up and look in the mirror and purposely see an aspect of ourselves. If we're going into a job interview, we look in the mirror and we try to call forward the aspect of ourselves that's most likable, presentable, articulate, professional, confident, all those things. We say, we try to pull that card out of the deck. We try to call forth that slice of our whole being. And we know it's not our whole being. Or
until the other shadow selves of us were like, you shall not pass.
Right, because you can't avoid seeing the whole deck. And that's what's so dangerous about that sort of self-exploration on psychedelics, is like, you might see a card in the deck that's just a little much. And then when you get sober, it'll be difficult to, what's the word? It's like integrate that experience into a holistic understanding of yourself. It can just be like, this is my concept of myself, but I saw this part of myself. These two are disconnected and I can't integrate them. It can be profoundly healthy to do if you're able to integrate aspects of yourself that are way, way, way out there into a whole perspective of yourself and be like, wow, I'm so much more than I thought. I'm more anger than I thought. I'm more passion than I thought. I'm more everything than I thought. And you still see yourself as a whole person. It can be healthy, but
because genuinely I have had something like that happen to me before, and like it completely destroyed my brain for months to like probably a year or two, because like I took acid, like felt like I was the worst person in the world, hated myself. I was like, I made a list of everything wrong with me that were things that probably weren't even wrong with me. And the next day I woke up, I was stuck like that for so long, just in that negative mindset of being like depressed and sad and blah, 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 blah. And I was like, okay, I should not have done this. I was not ready for it. And you get stuck there. So it's very dangerous to mess with.
I had, thank God, I had read a couple of books about acid before I did it. And so, and I was lucky because I wasn't necessarily in the best and most ready place or anything when I did it, but I did it and I had read a couple books about integrating the experience and stuff, and I was just barely able to manage it. But this whole book makes no mention of psychedelics. Which is interesting because they are so, like, the field of psychedelic research and the field of paranormal consciousness research are so,
they're linked,
they overlap so much.
It's more of like a kind of like, if you need it, here it is. Like the earth is like, here you go, like if you need it. But like we have every single thing inside of us to the point where
they're not
we
necessary.
Can open those things. You know,
psychedelics are not necessary.
No, they're not. But they're there.
And one of my favorite psychedelic teachers, I think it was either Ram Dass or Terence McKenna. He said, once you've gotten the message, hang up the phone. If you've had a significant psychedelic experience, you don't fucking need to do psychedelics anymore. You don't. Like, you can, but you might make it worse. You know, you might.
Yeah, I haven't done them in years because I'm genuinely like, it doesn't feel right. My body, that's not what it's asking for. If I do it, I'm gonna mess some things up.
Right. I don't do it anymore because when I think of it, it's like, it's what? Oh, is he the one who said that? Yeah. Thank you, Evan. Evan says it was Alan Watts who said, when you've gotten the message, hang up the phone. Because people do them repeatedly thinking that they'll get more and more and more this time. And it's like, what psychedelics can do is teach you that your consciousness is more multidimensional than you knew before. And then at that point, you can say, okay, now that I know that, how can I integrate that into my spiritual practice? Like, if acid showed you that you're way more layers of personality than you thought, you're more complex than you knew you were, then meditate on that and explore those different aspects of yourself through meditation. You can unlock that. You don't need a drug to unlock it. Now that you know that, act on that. Or if mushrooms showed you that your field of consciousness can merge with the field of consciousness of a forest of trees, then you don't need shrooms. Go camping, like, and breathe with the trees and look out at them you know that now, you have that now. It's not
And it's not like
necessarily
come
going
back
to
a new
make it
person,
better.
it's come back you. Like,
Yeah. And if you never do them, then read a fucking book about it. Like
Yeah.
if you honestly, if you read Be Here Now by Ram Dass, that book will stress you out psychologically. If you read that book, you will feel like you're going insane. Like
is it like a practice of mindfulness?
no, it's a story about Ram Dass like climbing the ranks of psychology and becoming a successful professor and counselor, and then kind of temporarily denouncing the Western perspective on psychology, doing a shitload of acid like for years, and then going to India and meeting a psychic guru who taught him unconditional love, and then coming back and becoming a spiritual teacher in the West. It's just this crazy journey. And then like the second, maybe I think it's like the last third of the book or so, is all of these crazy images that he drew. Like he draws these images and then he makes this crazy bubble text over it that just looks like a manic mess. That's just like, don't you know the whole thing is a game? Ha 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 ha. And then he just like, it's just pages and pages and pages of that. And if you read that book, you will have a psychedelic experience. You can't not, because your consciousness will align with, like, you'll follow him through the journey and you'll feel it. And that'll do it. Reading that book will terrify you and stress you out and shake up your perspective on your consciousness and the whole 9 yards. You don't need to do drugs. And honestly, the Bible will too. Like genuinely reading through the whole Bible, it's structured in such a way that it brings you from like, it introduces you to the dawn of consciousness, and then it brings you through the creation of the universe. It brings you through how human beings started to turn on each other, why we enslave and entrap each other, how we escape from that, how positive transformation always starts with a period of chaos. And then it brings you through like how we make laws and rules, and then how true love is something that follows the rules while simultaneously transcending them. And if you read that book start to finish, like that will get you there. Like you'll understand consciousness and being and enlightenment and the whole thing. Or read the Tao Te Ching, or like so many ways besides psychedelics. But so on the subject of the Bible, so Edgar Cayce, he was asked about people interacting with spirits and higher dimensional beings, and he doesn't advise it much. Like he doesn't advise that people reach out and just be like, hey, like some higher dimensional being out there, come talk to me, or that people do automatic writing, which is where you just like close your eyes and release your body and just let something write for you. He doesn't advise things like that because he says you have to be really careful about whether you're communing with something that has good or bad intentions.
Yeah.
And so he was asked, how can we discern whether beings of higher states of consciousness, higher realities, can be trusted or not? And he said, ask the beings if they affirm the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. And when I read that, it's like, well, cool, I'm a Christian, so I like to hear that from someone reputable like Edgar Cayce. But like, what does that mean? Like, and so it made me think about Jesus in a bigger way when I heard that, because it's not that, because I'm thinking, could this one individual who lived in this one place at this one time of history really be so important that higher dimensional beings need to be tested by whether or not they recognize him? So I was thinking about like, what does that mean exactly? And then I started thinking about what is the relationship between Jesus and the Christ? What is Jesus the person, and what is Christ the phenomenon, and or the Holy Spirit? And what does it mean that Jesus said that he had to leave so that he could return to us and always be present with us? And so my working theory for now is that God makes himself present in all dimensions, in all levels of reality, in whatever way he can. And the way that he makes himself present in our three-dimensional space is in the person of Jesus. And the way that he makes himself present in our four-dimensional space is as the Christ. So there's a difference between studying and following the teachings of the historical person Jesus, which I do believe was God's presence in this three-dimensional reality, and having a relationship with Christ. They're two different things. And the church is saying that all the time. You know, God, it's a relationship. The Christ, the Holy Spirit is with you, always has been, always will be present. And it's like, Like where? Like what are we talking about? And that's a way that it actually makes sense to me is that Jesus was saying, I can only live a finite life because this is the three-dimensional finite timeline reality where this is the way it works. You live for a fixed amount of time and you leave. So this is God's law in this place. And he tried to show us like he could leave the third dimensional reality, go to somewhere else and come back and then choose to leave and say he's leaving because he needs to leave to be present with us. And it's like, I think that one way to interpret what he was saying is that God goes to every level of reality. Jesus was God in the third dimension, and the Christ or the Holy Spirit is God in the fourth dimension, or the Father is God in the fifth dimension, or like, I don't know exactly how it works, but that's the way that I think about it now. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So, and then he said, he also said that someone asked him, what is the highest possible psychic realization? And he said that God talks to people. He said it in his weird language, like that the Father, he speaks on the heart of man, as is said in the scriptures or something. But Edgar Cayce says the highest psychic realization is that God talks to people, which is simultaneously profound and simple.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, wow, like the creator of the universe is accessible to us.
It's kind of back to like saying like he's always there, like, or the absolute whatever you believe in is always there. Like there's that power, like there's that higher whatever there, and it's always connected to us in a sense. But like when you believe in that relationship and you have faith in it and you put something towards it, like that connection is so much stronger because it's not just going one way. It's not just going from him or whatever to you. It's going both ways. So it's that much stronger, and then you can hear it, kind of thing.
We have to tune ourselves to it.
Yeah.
So now we've gotten to the end of the book where he makes tips about if you want to tune yourself psychically, this is how to do it. Number one, self-analysis and ideals. I think the 12 steps are a phenomenal model for this. At the end of the 12 steps, it says, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of completing these steps, we moved forward and passed on this knowledge to others. And I really think that's what they meant. Like they meant that if the steps are completed deeply and wholly and completely, you clean out your individual conscious and subconscious and you transcend. Not because you wanted to transcend and be badass or whatever it is, but because you were so desperate for health and well-being, because you got so lost that you became willing to look at yourself instead and genuinely change because you had no other option left. Just like Jesus said that, he said this over and over again in the Sermon on the Mount, like if you have nothing, you're just on the verge of having everything.
And that's a lot of people, like that's what a lot of people like don't know sometimes if they don't know anything about this kind of thing, because they'll feel like empty, they'll feel like they have nothing after they've done all this work or whatever, and they don't realize that they're going through some kind of awakening in a sense, and they just don't realize that they're like, what's happening to me, kind of thing.
Yeah. And so people who are at the end of their rope and desperate and addicted and homeless and all this stuff, and they're like, well, fuck it, I might as well do the 12 steps. It sounds like shit. I got to do a self inventory and apologize to people. Like, how is this going to get me what I want? But that's what they say at the end of the 12 steps. As a result of completing these, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of completing these steps. And so if someone's listening is looking for a model for self-analysis and ideals, that's a good one. Number two, attitude. ESP is more accessible with a light, enthusiastic, and helpful attitude. If when ESP experiments are presented as a game, they get more results than when they're presented as a job. Like if it's like, hey, this is an exam, how many can you get right? They get less right than when it's like, this is a game, how many cards do you guess? So lightness and enthusiasm and helpfulness is the way to go. 3, exercise. It was totally broad about this. Any exercise, whatever you feel called, whatever your body needs. 4, it lays out an Edgar Cayce eating plan that's kind of interesting. Eliminate all meats except fish, chicken, turkey, and lamb. Eat very few foods that combine starches with sweets, like cakes. Eliminate refined and processed foods. Avoid fruits and vegetables that are picked before ripening on the vine. Avoid the combination of milk and citrus. Avoid the combination of whole grain cereals and citrus fruits. Fuck every cereal commercial ever made. Avoid the combination of coffee and milk. Eliminate the combination of starches and proteins, and eat alkaline producing foods.
So it's, are you done with
That's
the
it.
part? So it's actually interesting that you say that, because something I learned from my old job is that that's what food poisoning is. It's another term of food poisoning that is very hard to find if you try and research it on the internet, because the typical term for food poisoning is when you eat something bad that has bad bacteria on it and it upsets your stomach, makes you nausea, shit your brains out, whatever. But like food poisoning in that kind of sense is exactly what you just said. Avoid mixing this with that. So like it basically acts as like if battery acid and water were to have contact, like it neutralizes basically. So when you're eating like citrus or putting milk in your coffee, it acts as a neutralizer. So you're not getting the benefits, you're disrupting something in your body, or like you need to like wait to eat fruit like 30 minutes until after you eat meat, or like you're not even supposed to put peanut butter and jelly on bread. Like they taste good together and it sounds right and it looks right because like it's yummy.
We were told
it's
it.
bomb, but it's not supposed to go together at all. It disrupts our entire system as food poisoning.
Yeah, that's a good way to think about food poisoning. We're all poisoning ourselves with food all the time. We're so irresponsible with it. Like, oh, you just throw anything in there. It's like,
think about it like a fridge. Like, what do you want in your fridge? Do you want it to look like the fridge in Resident Evil 7? It's a video game.
I know it's a video game. Is that like Grand Theft Auto?
Yeah. No, like zombie, I don't know, like
I'm just joking.
body parts, moldy
Every
body
video
parts,
game is like
whatever.
basically Grand Theft Auto, like racing car games, shooters, stonk.
Okay.
What? Evan wants to know if there's zombies in Grand Theft Auto. Not that I remember, but
I just heard there's some kind of cheat.
You probably put it in there somewhere.
Yeah.
There might be a cheat for it, and there's also a mini game where you smoke a joint and get attacked by aliens. That's like a lot like a zombie shooting game. Zombie shooting games are always just like navigate this space and the zombies will approach you and you shoot them. Like it's pretty straightforward. And that's how this mini game works, but with aliens.
Okay, but what I was going back to, like, do you want like moldy dead body parts in your fridge?
What does that have to do with aliens?
Or do you want like tomatoes that are ripe on the vine, as he says?
Why do you have any idea why not fruits and vegetables picked before ripening?
Maybe it hurts the tree's feelings.
It's like, dude, I wasn't fucking done with that.
I think that you're not getting all of the benefits that you're supposed to be getting, and maybe it's just like a law, like it's kind of like an abortion for a tree. That was really sad.
Number 5, castor oil packs. What is a castor oil pack?
So a castor oil pack is basically like it's like a remedy kind of thing. It's like you put castor oil either in a heat pack
What's
or on
castor
like
oil? Let's go way back.
I don't know. Will you look up what castor oil is? It's a type of oil.
Are you already doing it?
That you put
Dude,
like
he's the
in
best.
a.
Vegetable oil pressed from castor beans.
Interesting.
Castor oil is a vegetable oil pressed from castor beans.
Okay.
Yeah.
Castor beans. Okay.
Can
You're done with me.
Don't some castor oil packs have like essential oils in them though?
I guess they can. Yeah, you can add botanicals, you can add essential oils to it, etc. But basically,
But that's
what
not
it
what he
is-
said. He just said castor oil. So
So that's all you really need. You can add that to it if you're looking for some other type of benefit or result. But basically, what it is, it's like it's something you add to like a wet, hot like cloth or something, or a cold cloth, and you can apply it to that part of your body that needs the attention.
I think it. No, it didn't recommend. Oh yeah, warm. It recommended
Recommended warmth. Yeah, my mom used to make them for me when I was younger, like for girls.
Number 6 was spinal adjustments. And I wonder if that has something to do with the chakras. It didn't point that out specifically, but I can't help but assume it has something to do with it. But he recommends like going to a chiropractor and getting your spine adjusted.
Interesting.
And then I would assume having good posture so you don't need to get your spine adjusted again. But I'm thinking about doing that because that's a really good thing to do. And then number 7, crystals. And most of the crystals that he prescribed to people were lapis.
Lapis lazuli?
Not that, like not lazuli, but different lapis. because that's a whole category of crystals, I guess. I didn't know that, but and lazuli wasn't one of the ones mentioned actually, but you'll see various types of lapis were the stones most frequently recommended for psychic attunement. Usually individuals were told to wear the stone against the skin, in the throat, or heart region. In some cases, there was a warning to encase the stone in crystal. If you try some form of lapis, such as malachite, azurite, lazurite, or chrysocolla, and find that it's irritating or disturbing, don't hesitate to remove it. Number 8, Bible study. What Mark Thurston said about Edgar Cayce's perspective on the Bible was that that Edgar Cayce presented it like a guidebook for spiritual growth and for like a story about man's journey to reunite with God consciousness. Like, here's how we lost God consciousness. Here's this whole long story of how we found ourselves back to it when he revealed himself to us by becoming a person to come save our asses. So it doesn't like, I don't like basic perspectives on the Bible. You know, like we have to think about the Bible in a specific way. Like, I don't know. I feel like a lot of people who advocate for the Bible make it a lot less useful. You know, and of being like, you're a bad Christian if you don't religiously read the Bible every day or something like that, rather than just letting the Bible be useful. Like, let's explain to people why it's useful. Jordan Peterson, my favorite psychologist, did a series called Psychological Significance of the Biblical Stories. He's only done Genesis so far, but it was like 30 hours of lectures or something on what's psychologically useful about the stories in Genesis and what they mean about reality and our psyches and our mission to become people, like to become our true selves. So I want to read more of Edgar Cayce's insights about the Bible, because like as I've gotten into deeper spirituality, like this kind of extra dimensional stuff, it's not necessarily spirituality, call it physics or psychology or whatever, but
Or just what it is, yeah.
but as I've like tried to think from higher levels, I'm like, how do I think about the Bible now? Because I remain convinced that there's something supernaturally significant about the book, but when I mature, I look at the book and I'm like, this isn't what I thought. Like, this is more than I thought. There's something more here. And so I'm getting more interested in like mystic interpretations of the meanings of the Bible than like historical interpretations. Like, a lot of Bible teaching is like, and let me give you the historical context behind this, and like that stuff is useful in a certain way, but I'm getting interested in like
The deeper aspect of it in your
Yeah.
own, like, sense, yeah.
like the deep symbolism of it and the metaphysics of it and all of that
Yeah.
side of shit. So I really want to get some more Edgar Cayce insights on it. And number 12, I'm skipping ahead, but did you want to say something you Googled?
No.
Oh, okay, I thought you found something. Number 12, skipping ahead for a second, recommends a series of study groups that the Association for Research and Enlightenment facilitates online, called Search for God study groups, and recommends joining them. So that'd be kind of interesting to look into. And that might be a community of people who do view the Bible as something deeper than required reading for people in a certain religion. Like, what is up with this book, you know? So that might be interesting to do. Number 9 is spend time in nature. Number 10 is record dreams, because it strengthens your ability to link your conscious awareness with other levels of reality and other levels of consciousness when you really listen to what dreams are saying and then actually integrate what they're saying. And number 11 is meditation. And what it says about meditation is not to meditate for any specific purpose. Like, if you meditated on a decision you're making, or you meditated on something that you're frustrated about, it's not pure meditation. Pure meditation is like shutting off your own intentions and agendas and asking that you be tuned in with whatever is, I don't even want to put words on it, like tuned in with what's in the center of reality, or have your will
There really
united
aren't
with
words for it.
the ultimate God consciousness, or whatever you want to call it. Meditate to allow yourself to be tuned. Like, a string on a guitar doesn't tune itself, it is tuned.
The literal sentence for it, I feel like, is just meditate to let yourself be, like, period.
Yeah.
Just that blank.
And I think it ends up being a lot more than that.
Yeah.
But if that's
there's
the
no
goal,
words for it.
it opens the door for the real magic of meditation to happen.
Yeah.
In the same way that you couldn't tune the strings on your guitar if they were trying to get themselves into the right tune. But if they just relax, you can tune them. And God really is trying to tune us, and we're really not letting him because we're caught up in all the shit that we want to do. If we could just shut the fuck up and just sit on the floor for like 10 minutes, he can
get our ohm on. Yeah.
he can straighten some things out a little bit, and we don't have to do anything. We have to stop doing anything at all.
I think you just made a connection in my brain about the spine.
Oh, what's that?
So it's like your chakras run, like your inner wheel run along your spine and like up to here. So maybe that's why he says go to the chiropractor, because you're straightening out your chakras.
I was thinking it has something to do with that, but I don't.
They lay on the center of your spine, like.
Yeah, but I don't understand like how the fourth dimensional or finer body, as Edgar Cayce calls it, connects to the third dimensional physical body as we understand it. Like
Maybe it's attached itself to it.
yeah, maybe they're. Yeah,
I mean, there has
maybe
to be
they're
some
attached.
correlation.
Yeah.
Or maybe there doesn't. Who knows?
Yeah, maybe they're attached because
Maybe that's how we're able to
that's
function.
what the yogic tradition says. It's
Maybe
like,
that's how we're able to function. Yeah.
oh, it's animating us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Basically, because like we think it's like cognitive always all the time, but like what if it's more than that? Like what if we're able to, because our literal soul is attached to our physical body. It's not just brain function.
Even if it is cognitive all the time, we still don't really have an explanation for what it is that's animating our cognition, our brain. Like we know that there's electrical impulses firing all over the place on a scale we can't even fucking wrap our heads around. But we don't know what's animating it all exactly and where that thing goes when it stops animating this body. And so, yeah, that seems like a decent way to think about it. Some exercises. These are really cool. There's a partner exercise that we could do where we pick a certain time of the day where we aren't going to be around each other, and we each just try to write down what the other person is doing. Like you were feeling hungry, you were feeling irritated, you were running to the store, you were, they all have to do with food.
Food and grumpiness.
You were playing video games, you were.
Yeah.
And so for 20 days, you pick a partner, and the same time every day, you just try to record what the other person was doing.
That's cool.
And you'll gradually get better at being accurately tuned in to what the other person is doing. And it's a lot easier with people that you're close with because, and I don't understand the physics of this part, but people that you're closer with and more intimate with, you're more tuned in with in a fourth dimensional way. And I don't get how that works, but that's what it says, that people you know better, you find an easier time connecting with fourth dimensionally. And I imagine that the closer we get to that cosmic consciousness that Jesus described, where we genuinely love everyone just like they're us, it'd be easier to have that sort of, to be tuned in like that with complete strangers. You could see someone that you don't even know and tune in with them like they're your best friend. I think if you could really see with Jesus's eyes. But for us morons, I think it's like way easier. That's what the book says. It's way easier to tune in with people that you're close with. Sleep suggestion, setting your intention for what you want to learn from your dreams and suggesting that to your subconscious mind, and then responding to what it gives you when you wake up. Number 3 for exercises, operating in the hypnagogic state between awake and asleep. So here's one cool exercise it said, is when you first wake up in the morning, stick your forearm straight up in the air, and then allow yourself to drift back into the hypnagogic state. And if you slip past the hypnagogic state into a sleep state, your arm will fall and wake you up. And then you can be consciously aware of the journey that your awareness went from your waking conscious reality through the hypnagogic and into the sleeping. Then you come back up, and it'll teach you to consciously navigate that space. And I've heard legends of monks and gurus and whatnot who don't even sleep. Like they don't lose consciousness. They willingly navigate into sleeping consciousness, but they don't lose their awareness.
So
they
the
just
reason
kind
that-
of, their spirit just walks into the dream world and hangs out for a couple hours and then consciously navigates back to the conscious reality. And you're a lot more psychically tuned in if you can do that, because you know how to, instead of just like closing your eyes and just fucking falling into another dimension and not knowing how you even did it, it's like a graceful transition.
The reason that I pointed that out earlier and like said something about a lot of doctors or like on the science aspect of it will tell you that it's a mental illness is because that has literally happened to me. So like when I like months ago was meditating every single day, doing guided meditations, doing yoga, eating whatever, taking care of myself in like the way that we're supposed to take care of ourselves. Like I would have those things happen to me, and like my doctor explained it to me as I would dream before I fell asleep. Like, do you dream when you're awake, like before you fall asleep? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, that's narcolepsy. And I was like, oh, interesting. I'll figure it out on my own. Like, cool, I have narcolepsy. No, I don't. Like, I don't have narcolepsy. Am I tired all the time? Yeah, because I'm tired.
You're not that tired all the time.
No. But, like, long story short, like, the reason that I believe, and I knew like off my own intention, those things were happening to me and like still do happen to me is because like of meditation and just being like intact with your soul and like having that connection with that kind of realm. I don't know.
When I'm meditating more and reading more scripture and doing more yoga and all that stuff, I experience the same thing.
It's how I came up with that fairy in the dragon's mouth book is being in that state.
in-between state. That story is so phenomenal. That's on SoundCloud, right?
Yeah.
Look up the fairy in the dragon's mouth. How do you spell your SoundCloud thing? Such a professional. We're ready to blow, dog.
I don't know. I think it's Brük-eyed.
But, you know, I'll post it in the YouTube description because that story is so cool. So if any of my friends want to listen to that, they can. It's sick. So it's like a short story or a guided meditation.
It's like a free verse
you could see it either way.
Short story basically on a experience that I experienced after a guided meditation, like before I was falling asleep. This is the place I went to. Like this is a thing I've seen, and I was in my intent, like I was trying to reach out to a kind of guide, like if a spirit guide in a sense, and I found it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Number 4, physical repetition, like doing something mindless and repeated, like doing repeated simple math problems or something like that can busy your cognitive mind in a way that allows their spiritual mind to come forward. I'm not using the right terms there. I don't know exactly how it works. But my friend Mitch asked me one time why I think he has transcendent experiences while he's drumming. And so I'm going to tell him to watch this and hear like this feedback from Edgar Cayce that if you do something physical and repeating that you can go mindless doing, then your mind can wander into higher states of consciousness. And that's something I experience when I'm doing something at work that I know how to do and I'm working hard and doing my best. I always get into this zone where I just start getting downloads. And it's like, God, this is like more productive than if I was trying to meditate or do something like just.
It reminds me of that kids show that we watched, Soul. I don't remember the place that they called it, but like you remember like that moment like in the movie where the people were so in tune with what they were doing.
No, they called it The Zone.
The Zone, yeah.
Yeah.
Like was it The Zone?
Yes.
Yeah, and you would
in
watch
the zone,
their
like
bodies
you're in the
like
zone.
go into this zone, and it was some higher like dimension kind of thing, and they don't even realize it. They're just there.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Interesting.
Number 5 was sensory deprivation. So if you can make it so that your eyes can't see anything, your ears can't hear anything, your nose can't smell anything, your physical body can't feel anything, you can't taste anything, then it seems as though your consciousness will find something else to sense and will activate an extra sense that's beyond the 5. So like a float tank, or if you don't have $1 million a week to spend,
Alaska.
put a blindfold on. You say Alaska? No, that's too cold. You can put a blindfold on and put earplugs in
and
if
lay
you
have
down.
COVID, that might help because your taste and smell would probably be gone.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's why China released the COVID virus, was to enlighten the American population by depriving them of the sense of taste. And we're
we
like,
just saw it as a bad thing. That's crazy.
So yeah, sensory deprivation. And then he gave this other recommendation about like how to use decision making to tune in with spirituality, and it's kind of confusing. I don't love it, but I basically said set a spiritual ideal for yourself. Like, who would you be if you were if you were totally united with the will of God and your truest self? Who would that be? And call that to mind. And then with whatever decision in life you're trying to make, set yourself a tentative yes or no, like should I take this job or not? You take that decision, you hold it in your mind, then you look at your spiritual ideal for yourself, and then you ask, what gets me closer to that spiritual ideal, yes or no? And then you hold that tentative decision without making like a final decision yet. And then you meditate for attunement. Not meditate on the decision itself, but meditate just to tune yourself in and leave the decision aside and forget about it and don't care whether it comes out yes or no. Then, instead of thinking about the question of yes or no, ask the question and listen and see if God gives you an answer, or a higher higher version of yourself in a higher state of consciousness drops an answer down. And then compare that answer by your spiritual ideal, and then make a decision, and then act and follow through on the decision. So that model is kind of confusing and doesn't seem that helpful to me, but that was another exercise that it provided. If someone like wants to try that out, a way of making decisions from a higher state of consciousness than the state of consciousness we normally make decisions from. We can make major life decisions just off of an anxious desire to avoid one particular hypothetical negative outcome, and just make decisions for such stupid, small, not stupid, but small reasons. And so that's a way to make decisions from a high state of consciousness. And dude, that's all the notes I have. That's some theories on how telepathy is possible, how higher states of consciousness are possible, and some exercise and strategies for achieving them. But if someone listens to this because they want to be psychic, I don't think it's that helpful, because I don't think the real answer is really that helpful. It's just like, well, if you want to be psychic, then figure out the best thing you can do for the world and do your best to do that, and eat healthy and exercise. It's like, well, that's kind of lame. But maybe like couples out there like trying the exercise of thinking about what the other person is doing is kind of cool.
And it kind of gives people, like, I feel like genuinely a new perspective kind of way to look at things. I don't know.
Well, I feel like I've been running through the 12 steps, and it was like multiple things convinced me to do it. It's something that's really good for you to do, but it took multiple things to convince me to do it. So maybe this information can give one of our friends like one more reason to do, like meditating.
Yeah.
Maybe like we all know that we should be meditating, but when you hear like meditating might make me more psychic, it's like, that's kind of cool. It's like one more reason to try it out.
Day and age, like people are tired, man. Like it's something we all want to do for sure. We all want to do so many things, but like people are tired. Like it's a cruel world, and like it sounds nice, but in the moment you're like, I can't. Like I'm stuck. People are stuck nowadays, and it sucks for them. Yeah. But like sometimes you just got to wake up and do something that sucks sometimes, because it'll become a force of habit. Kind of like, I don't know, you mentioned something about that earlier. But once it becomes a force of habit, it's a force of nature, and then it just kind of falls on you. Also, this is good for people if they want to listen to other, like, people mess up words a lot, then it'll make them feel not so alone.
Cool. Yeah. You got anything, Evan?
No, I'm good.
Cool.
You got any other thoughts?
Me?
Yeah.
Brain? Me? Use brain?
Yeah. Do you have any more brain?
I don't do that.
That's cool.
That's cool.